Welcome to the Mom Curious podcast, Micaela Ezra. I have looked forward to getting to know you better for years, actually. I was looking at our messages and I contacted you, I think years ago, hey, your work is so beautiful. Do you have any interest in making a challah cover or something? I don't know what it was.
Sounds about right.
It was so long ago. Or I think I was interested in a family tree, and I was like, do you do any commissions? Anyway, I have been in love with your aesthetic and your artistic voice and heart and eye for so long, and it's just such a pleasure to sit down and get to know you all the way in Australia from Brooklyn.
Wow.
How cool.
Yeah, it's wild. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those beautiful words. And I think the beauty of Instagram is that as artists, we can connect to one another and we can find one another, which we probably, we didn't do when I was living very close to you in Manhattan. It was only in this online space that we had that opportunity, which is the magic of that portal, really.
And this portal, even what time is it in Australia right now?
It's 9 a.m.
9 a.m. by you. It's 5 p.m. Are we even in the same day?
No, we are not. I'm tomorrow. The world still exists. Everything's okay.
Thank you so much. And I'm yesterday. And honestly, it's going pretty good.
Good.
It's okay. Yeah. Wow. What a trip, huh?
It really is.
It really is. So the first time that I actually was introduced to your work was when I was sponsoring in OA, which is Overeaters Anonymous. It's a 12-step program for binge eating and whatever else.
Yes.
And one of my sponsees who guested on the show, she's amazing. Her name is Michelle. And she gifted me a deck of cards.
Wow.
And it was your deck in collaboration with Gabby Bernstein.
Yes.
And for years when I lived in the West Village, your heart and art were just plastered all over my walls.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is so beautiful. I'm always blown away when I hear that the art finds its life in someone else's home, and that it was in the West Village, because the West Village is such a part of my story as well. And
Really?
It was gifted to you. That's so generous. I mean, that's beautiful.
Well, how is the West Village so much part of your story?
Well, I lived on the border of West Village and Chelsea. I lived on West 14th Street for many years. They were my first homes in New York. And then my husband and I lived in the West Village together until the very, very end, the 9th month of my pregnancy, when I moved with my first child to Chelsea. And it's just, for me, it just had this incredibly strong, energetic pull. I met so many of the most important people in my life in the West Village. It just was really a serendipitous place for me. So, yeah, I love it there. Where were you living?
Cool. I was on Barrow and Hudson.
Oh, amazing.
That was my son's first home. Barrow, and a very special place with your cards all over my home. Blessing my space every day.
I think you probably find this through your work and through this podcast, but to create something in your home in a really intimate space, which is the love pouring out of your heart onto paper or through word or through movement, and then to know that that resonates with someone else and it finds its own resonance in their intimate space, and it carries its own language and its own life force beyond the walls of your the parameters of your home where it was created. It's mind-blowing. That is the biggest gift to an artist, to know that their work has life outside the bounds of where it was created.
And that's just one piece of your major portfolio. If you could actually introduce yourself to the audience and let us know who you are as it stands today in this moment at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Right now, I'm a mom. I'm a mom who has returned from the most inspiring and beautiful week, and it's the first time that I left my children. In my eldest daughter is 8, so I have an 8-year-old Aliyah, a 6-year-old Charlie, and a 2-year-old Emmanuel, 2 daughters and a son. And I grew up in Sydney, where I'm living now, but at 24, I packed my bags and a portfolio. I had finished studying fashion in Australia, commerce and fashion, and I was determined to get a job in New York City. And so off I went with a bag of my colorful samples and a portfolio and knocked on doors. And one thing led to another, and against the odds, I found a position as a women's wear designer at Cynthia Steffi in New York. She was, at the time, a major contemporary women's wear designer in that space. And so there, that began my journey in New York, and where I thought I was going there just for a job, I discovered 15 years into my stay there that I really had gone for life experience and a life journey. It was where I met my husband. It was where I started my family. It was where my spiritual learning and understanding was nourished and exploded. And so I spent 15 years in this city, which for me was so rich and so dense and gave me so much. So I started my time there in fashion. And then after I got married, I needed a break from that. And so I saw that in the new space, in which I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I would start my own label or if I would go back to work for someone else. But I started to receive illustration requests. And so my career as an illustrator really unfolded in that time. And also, I mean, this is a sub story, which is my spiritual learning, my exposure to Jewish spiritual teachers, secular spiritual teachers, you name it, was offered since I landed in New York, and that gave rise to, a new education or a deepening education, which has then informed my life and informed my own development and my own practices and my own teachings. So here we are.
Wow.
Here we are. During COVID, my family and I relocated back to Australia, not intending for it to be permanent. And my answer is that we're here for now. We're here for now. I am working both as an illustrator. I created a Judaica brand named AHYIN Judaica, which is a collection of predominantly textiles, but I work with artisan communities in indigenous realms in Mexico. And I also work with a team in India now to create these different textiles, which we use for Shabbat, which we use for Chagim, for festivals. And my sort of third stream of creativity is now as a spiritual teacher of Judaism and in motherhood. And yeah, I feel, Daniela, that was like a winding, weaving path of many things, and there were so many facets left out, but we'll get there.
And something that I'm learning more and more in these conversations is just that, like, that's the path of the feminine. If we were like, and I think every being has a feminine essence, as we all know. It's not male or female
Yes.
necessarily, but if we were masculine beings, you probably would say, I was born in Sydney. I was going to be a fashion designer. I was a fashion designer in Sydney. It's nice to meet you. And that would have been totally valid and exciting, and I'd still be down to talk.
Right.
But that's not the way.
And you know what?
But that's not the way. That's not the unfolding of the feminine heart. It's just not. I'm learning.
It's so true. It's like, maybe if we see ourselves, I got this vision as you were speaking of a flower with the petals, and the petals are all overlapping. So if I peel back one petal to reveal something to you, it's connected to another petal, and then another part of myself is revealed. But they don't fall off the flower in like a really orderly way. They're all interconnected. So there are parts of your story that are revealed in any one moment and they link to something else and something else.
Nature's amazing that way, right? Like the fact that
Mm.
that each and every flower is orchestrated such that the petals can be ripped off or fallen off independently and that the rest can still exist. It's really incredible.
Yes, yes,
The
it
sacred
is. It is.
geometry of nature.
That's what it
And
is.
we're
Yeah.
not separate from that. I was speaking to a doctor the other day. He's a pediatrician who talks about plastic and what plastic is doing both
Yes.
to our bodies, our little baby bodies, our adult bodies, and also the planet body. It's all one thing. We like
Yes.
to we like to believe or operate as if they're separate, but it's all the same. When we talk about a flower, when we talk about you, Micaela, it's the same.
Yeah. It's wild. And today we said we'd talk about motherhood and spirituality. And that is the biggest gift that we can give our children, is to realize that we're all interconnected in this way. And what happens to me affects what happens to every member of my family, and then society, and then the world. And how I behave is interconnected with the ripple effects, beyond me. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm fascinated to hear more about what this doctor has to say about plastics and the earth.
We'll publish the episode and it'll be great. I try very hard to to dance with some of the like heavier bits of our life, like modern life, with
Yes,
an even
yes.
hand. And yeah, I hope that at least it's solution based. At least and I find what you put out into the world to be reverent of the darkness and always considering the light. When you hop on to Instagram and you share your art, or you share a little bit about your children, not so much, but a little, or about the Jewish experience, if you're going to touch on the darker bits of humanity, I always find that you try to balance with the light, not ignoring that there are hard things, but that our job is to at least work towards solutions.
I think it's hopeful. I try to be hopeful. I try to see the best in the situation, the best in humanity. I would say I'm an optimist. And so we are all facing these grave realities around us: the suffering of people in our midst, the suffering of the planet, the responsibilities that we have. And and to sit in that hardship and that sorrow won't help us to move forward, because we have to feel the pain of that reality, but use our hope and our optimism and our prayer and our trust and our faith to climb forward to the next step, to make the next right action, so that we can hopefully relieve
For
that.
ourselves and for others.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I'm curious about your spiritual journey in New York. It's so funny to me because as you were talking, like, I was born and raised in New York. I could cry just thinking about it. Like, this is my home. And, my parents are Israeli. And so I have a deep connection to the land of Israel, but like, I'm a real New Yorker. And I, I don't know that New York has gotten the best rap when it comes to anything, but particularly when it comes to finding the divine. So to hear you say that you did find great spiritual learning here is so interesting to me, because I think, New York is known for the land of creativity and opportunity and nightlife, and maybe in COVID that's changed a lot, but I love that you found your spiritual self in the
Oh
West.
wow, Daniela, that's Yeah, I'm blown away because for me that was such a rich part of my reality in New York that I forget that for many people it's not. But I think that what you're describing is whatever you're looking for in New York City, you will find. Whatever you're drawn towards. If you want to immerse yourself in theater, it is the best theater in the world. You have the best acting schools, and you can be so caught up in that world and completely immersed. If you are looking to explore dance, it's there from an amateur level to a professional level, whatever you want, every class that you want from the Joffrey Ballet School to Five Rhythms to, the best performers, it's there. And if you're an investment banker, I mean, there's your world. Everything's happening in New York. So no matter what your heart craves or what you're meant to find, you will be able to do it at the highest level, the most energetic level. And for me, I came thinking it was fashion. I went to work in the fashion industry and I was completely consumed by that reality. And then two things happened. I met in the West Village in the most serendipitous way my dear soul sister Gabby Bernstein, and she introduced me to a world of what I call universal spirituality. Teachers like Marianne Williamson and Wayne Dyer, and and teachers of meditation. And that was the first time I was really exposed to meditation, and and so I was hearing all of this spiritual talk, let's just say, these ideas that I had never been exposed to before in Australia. And at the same time, one week, a friend of mine who was there from Australia took me to a lesson by a shiur, by an incredible rabbi. His name's Simon Jacobson. He's also from Brooklyn, from Crown Heights. And to backtrack, I had a very traditional modern Orthodox Jewish education in Australia.
Ditto.
It was, yes, it was at a Jewish school. We were very culturally Jewish, traditionally Jewish, celebrated all the festivals, Friday nights. It was a very Zionistic school, so we learned all about Israel, but it wasn't spiritual. That wasn't in the dialogue, even though it was in the heart and soul of many people teaching us. It wasn't the way the topic was approached. And so I went to the shiur with Rabbi Jacobson, and he was talking about the soul, about our essence, about our unique role. And it was just like a light bulb went off inside of me. And I felt like this is the Judaism that I was missing. This is the Judaism that is speaking to my heart, that I always felt connected to, but I didn't know was there. And through him, and really through this rabbi's teachings, I became more and more curious and connected to these ideas. And it all comes from Chassidut, which was a branch of a Jewish lifestyle and mysticism, heavily influenced by Kabbalah and mysticism. But it's woven into your life, your everyday life. And so that was those two pillars really shifted my experience of life and the world. And it was all happening while I was working, 18-hour days in the fashion industry. And there was all of this stress about fabrics and buttons and that dynamic around me. And meanwhile, I'm in my spare moments Googling what is the energy of the month? What is the story of the week from a Jewish perspective? There was a beautiful girl who worked with me who was Christian, and we would come in on a Thursday and discuss. She'd been to Bible class and I'd been to my Torah class, and we were exchanging ideas. And this is all happening while the madness of the fashion world is around us. But already at that time in my mid-20s, the callings of my heart were really loud, and I was able to follow them over the past 15 years.
So how did you follow up on those teachings, Chassidut, mysticism? So just for the listener who may not know, Jewish or not everyone does know this lineage.
Yeah.
Chassidut is like the black hat, ultra orthodox. Some people call it sect, but portion of the Jewish population, um, not it's not so common for a modern woman to be delving into these ancient texts, particularly the Kabbalah, which from where I grew up was only for men 40 years and older. So it's a really
Yeah.
interesting sort of empowerment that you found your soul's calling, and in that calling, it was not necessarily, it just wasn't, it's not common that a woman would delve in so deeply. And I'm wondering if how you got sort of access and a teacher of your own. They say asera harav, right? Like find yourself a teacher. Who was your teacher, and how did you move forward in this path?
Yeah, look, it's very gradual. We're having this in a 5 minute, synopsis, this conversation, but I went to Rabbi Jacobson's lessons for many, many years. I continue to learn from him. And his gift is that he draws these lofty spiritual concepts down into a way that feels very relevant, very modern, very secular. And I say secular in that it's not separate from our lives. It's not that I have a Jewish compartment or a spiritual compartment or a mystical learning and it's in a corner that I access once a week or once a month when I go to a lesson. This is something that's infused gradually into my day-to-day awareness, my day-to-day reality, and it's very much connected and enmeshed within Jewish lifestyle practices. So it's not that I'm studying and not applying it. These ideas come alive in my day-to-day life. So I learned really with Rabbi Jacobson for many years. He has shiurim and an amazing website called the Meaningful Life Center, which is available to anyone and everyone. And you do not have to be Jewish for this to feel relevant and meaningful. This is really how to live a meaningful life. That is what he teaches. And these spiritual ideas are infused in a way that's sometimes very obvious, sometimes very subtle. He talks a lot about the soul and the importance of us to connect to our soul and to understand its presence. And that's not unique to Judaism. That's across the board. We are spirits having a physical experience. We are souls in a body, and we were placed here for a reason. And we have important work to do, which is highly unique to us. And yet, if we can find that jewel within, if we can find that light and that soul and that spark within, we can see it in you. I can see it in you. I can see it in everyone I encounter. And so suddenly the world around me has this spiritual light and this spiritual drumbeat that I wasn't aware of before. And I have value and enhanced value for every human being I meet and their role on the planet, and how essential it is for us to relate to each other in that way.
It's so interesting. After a yoga class, that we'll bow, right, and say namaste. And
Yeah.
from my understanding, namaste means the light in me bows to the light in you. These are universal
Yeah.
concepts. In Yiddish, sometimes they call it a pintalayid, like a little pilot light.
Yes.
A pintalayid really means like a
Yes.
little Jew, but the idea is that there's a little pilot light that doesn't go out, and that light is the divinity within all of us. That's
Mm.
found in every
Yeah.
culture. That's what I experience when I see your art. I experience a sort of it's it's familiar to me because there's a Jewish lens, but it's also different than the way I was raised, because I also was raised modern Orthodox with, I say often with like the do's and don'ts, with the do's and
Yeah.
don'ts, and it's rather day to day, and it's a beautiful life, but it's not mystical. It's not it, and there I always knew that there was an element to Judaism and to life that is magic, like the fact that we're
Yeah.
here, even just like how we're talking,
Yeah.
right? Like the fact that I'm talking to you from yesterday in a place where you used
Yeah.
to live, that you actually
Yeah.
have been holding my hand for a long time, and that time is this sort of made up concept that now we get to actually interact, like I've always known that.
Yes.
That's being human. But it is a beautiful thing to have found you and to hear some of the nuggets of Judaism that I've heard before, just the Hebrew itself, the Yiddish itself, the touch points of the Sabbath and the festivals and all of that. But it is universal. These are universal truths in my understanding.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, we each have our ancient texts or our wisdom that we learn from. And they have to be different because that's how we each draw down a different lens into the world, a different shade of light into the world, so that we can make with our diversity and our different approaches this beautiful tapestry, which is life. We each have our own role to do in terms of elevating one another, elevating consciousness, elevating heart space, and healing from different perspectives. I love that you brought up the Pintele Yid, the little Yid, but that's connected to the Yud, that the Yud, the Hebrew letter, which is really the starting point of all other letters. It's like a point of intention. The minute they say your pen, your quill hits the parchment, you've already created a Yud. So this idea as being that point of intention, that spark of light, that first instinct of an idea that comes to us, that's the Yid or the Yud that is inside each one of us. That is the spark of godliness, the intention of our soul, the godly intention that manifests through us. We each carry that Yud inside. That's really the essence of this Jewish soul, or this universal soul that we're speaking about, that we each have.
How do you carry forth that soul in your day to day? Like what is the practice look like for you now? I'm sure it changes all the time, but what does it look like now?
So I continue to learn. I continued to learn through Rabbi Jacobson, and then I discovered other teachers who have informed my philosophy and way of life. And that's a big part of it, is to continue to be nourished and to fill up whoever your teacher is, whether it's a yoga studio or a teacher online or an in-person class, to be nourished spiritually and to have your mind continually stimulated and your heart stimulated. The other aspect is, through my family, through my children, I have to put all of these ideas into practice, because it's all very nice and good for me to sit alone on my meditation cushion or to immerse myself in study and feel very connected and spiritual. But then when there's chaos downstairs and I've got 3 kids screaming at me and someone's hungry and I'm not organized and whatever the chaos of day-to-day life, how do you draw that spirit into the moment?
I don't know
And
how.
I don't know. I think that it's right now for me, the resounding answer is by being present, really being present with each of my children and their needs, and not resisting the moment that I'm in. Making a sandwich can be a spiritual practice. It's a gesture of love. It's a way of giving attention and soothing to someone I care about. Having patience in the moment when all of that is unfolding and there's intensity in the home, and how to take a deep breath with that and just be highly attuned to what their soul is asking for in that moment. They're not fighting because they're not fighting because they don't like one another. They're fighting because they want to be heard. They want to feel seen. They need their mother's attention. They need their sister's love, whatever it is in that moment. So trying to get to the heartbeat of each moment despite the chaos around me in the home is another way of drawing this practice into reality. A third way is We have, obviously, in the Jewish cycle, many holidays and festivals, and we have Shabbat every week. And I'm very connected to those rituals, and I'm very connected to the ebb and flow of the Jewish calendar, including the lunar cycle and the Hebrew months. And I learn a lot about the energy of each month and what that reflects back to us in terms of our psychology, our personal healing and growth. So I try to really stay very in tune with Jewish time, with Hebrew time, and look at the calendar and what's happening energetically or in the ether, and reflecting that back to myself so that I can learn more about where I'm at and what I need to do to grow and heal.
My gosh, amazing. I'm like really taken with the idea of making a sandwich is or can be a spiritual practice. Just that like or drawing forth patience in a moment where you're frazzled naturally, normally. Who wants to be yelled at? Who wants to be in the midst of chaos? Who wants to be in a rush? No one. It is so much quote unquote easier to tap into source energy when I'm eyes closed and repeating a mantra. It really is. And thank God for that practice. And
Thank
yeah,
God,
you know,
yes.
they say in the Vedas, like, we dip the wool in the dye and then let it dry. Dip our consciousness into source energy, ritual, learning, alone time, quiet, exercise, prayer, and then we let it dry in the sun and let it bake in. Baking in is those tests, those moments. Do I wipe the butt with love? Do I
Right.
wipe the butt with love? No, that's a real question. It's totally
Yes.
understandable if I wipe the butt with, like, let's just go. It's totally understandable. And if I really want to bake in that color of the dye, and by the dye I mean that source energy, that God energy, that expansive heart space, I wipe with love and maybe a sense of let's go.
Yes.
If we need to
Urgency.
go.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a really essential part of all of that is how compassionate we are towards ourselves, how forgiving we are towards ourselves when we slip up in a moment, when we wipe the butt with urgency instead of with love. Like, that's also okay. It doesn't have to be like we're floating through life, although that would be nice, but like serene angels and the house is exploding and we're all zen. And no, like,
Or the house
yes,
never explodes.
yeah, right. That I'm going to shout back, and I'm going to get frazzled when I have to draw another picture as I'm trying to prepare dinner, or as I'm trying to collect my thoughts for a podcast, or whatever it is. But I think as we expand our capacity for self-compassion and for forgiveness, that allowing that spaciousness, that inner love, is what speaks louder than when we slip up, when we, you know, uh, move off the rails for a moment. That self understanding and ability to hold ourselves and all parts of ourselves is the biggest example that we can give to our children.
I have such a hard time with self-forgiveness, and I love that you um brought it up as a spiritual practice and as like the conduit to spiritual motherhood, compassionate motherhood, conscious motherhood, like a good butt wipe, you know? Like it, like if you want to make a great dinner, be nice to yourself.
I mean, you just captured that completely. If you want to make a great dinner, be nice to yourself. If you want to be a great partner, be nice to yourself. If you want to be a great mom, be nice to yourself. If you want to draw an amazing picture, be nice to yourself. It's really shifts your whole perspective. And eases this vibration that we have within, the voice of the critic, which is so loud for some of us and so dominant in our lives, that is felt by the people around us. And when we can expand the voice of the heart and that connection to intuition and that deeper wisdom and that deeper knowing, which tells us it's all right, everything's okay, you're doing a great job, keep showing up with love. When we can tap into that voice within, that will speak volumes to the people around us, and it will infuse into the meal, infuse into that moment that we share with our child on the playmat. It will infuse into our relationships.
How did you come to that connection?
I think years of therapy and work, with a beautiful woman who is more like a mentor to me and who has guided that philosophy. And then once I understood it very clearly about how it plays out in my own mind and heart, where I'm critical towards myself, I'm a perfectionist, and that's one form of self-criticism, really. And so once I understood that mechanism within myself, I could really see it reflected in all of these spiritual teachings that we're talking about, these books that I was reading, the lessons that I was going to. And what I think is incredible is that motherhood has taught me to be more compassionate towards myself, because if I'm having a moment of self-doubt or criticism, I can reflect back and ask myself, what would I do if my daughter came to me with this issue? What would I do if my daughter was having this problem, or being a perfectionist, or having a self-doubt? And how would I speak to her? What advice would I give her? And how can I then turn that inwards and start internally mothering myself from that voice and perspective?
Mm.
And I think also children are interesting because there's a lot that we say in our minds and then suddenly we say aloud when we're responding to our kids, just the knee-jerk reactions, whether it's responding to something they're doing beautifully, responding to something they're doing when they're playing up or they're pushing our buttons. And we learn a lot about what's going on in our mind when we hear ourselves and our instinctive responses to different situations.
Yeah, it's true. I have always been so hard on myself. So hard on myself. And it always comes up in relationship that I'm really hard on other people too. And what's interesting is that the part of me that has always wanted to evolve and grow, always wanted to be kinder and more patient with collaborators, with my husband, who I love so much, with my children particularly. And it only is very recently that I connected, and people have said this to me. My mother always said this to me. She's like, people treat others the way they treat themselves. She always would say that to me. And I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what she meant. She would always be like, "Oh, well, if they're hard on you, they're probably really hard on themselves."
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand.
That's so wise.
Mm. Sometimes it takes a long time to really hear what your mother was
Yeah.
trying to communicate, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that funny?
It's the baking in of the dye that you described. Sometimes it can take years to bake in.
Right. Particularly with the way having been mothered, because we're mothered all the time. We're dipped in the dye
Yes.
dye for so long.
Yes. Yes.
The individuation process of soaking in the sun and letting it bake in is less so. Also because, our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, they live in our minds. When we're parenting, sometimes that what I like to remember is that like the things that I say become their subconscious.
Yes.
Not only the things that I say, not only, but it's a big part of it.
Huge, huge part of it. Absolutely. And, this is essential for us to realize. And it points out that the best work we can do, more than lip service to anything with our children, is our own self-healing. And there's this quote which I quote all the time, and it's from Instagram. I don't know where it came from originally. A friend of mine, Amy Raup, posted it, but it says, if we heal ourselves, we heal our children's children. So this work that we're doing to expand our own vessel of compassion within, or to be more self-forgiving, or to learn and grow spiritually, whatever pathway we're on that's nourishing, that is the biggest example we can set for our children, and the biggest gift we can give to them.
It's interesting that you say that, because before logging on, I really I sort of giggled with Ashley, who's our producer today. And I was just like, I'm just so curious. Like, how do you stay connected and spiritual with 3 children? Whew. Because it is a lot of chaos. It's necessarily a lot of mess.
Yes.
It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of chaos. It has to be that. And now I'll ask you for real.
Yeah.
Creating art, and the type of art that you create seems of the heart and of the soul, and it seems quiet, and from what I can tell, you're a sensitive soul. How do you nourish yourself as an artist and as a spiritual being?
It's hard. I mean, life is busy and full, and thank God there are so many things that we each want to attend to, and there's a limited number of hours in a day. So the honest answer for me right now is I cannot do it all in the same moment. Right now, 2 months ago, really, in the Hebrew month of Elul, it's right before our new year, and we're focused deeply on introspection, on reflection, on looking at where we've come over the past year. And I committed to painting that month. I really just felt this urge that I needed to tap into my soul by doing something that was fluid for me, doing something that allowed me to be in flow and sort of get out of the chatter of my mind and connect through a process. For someone else, that might have been running or singing or dancing. For me, it was painting. And so I allowed myself to really paint without any objective, without any schedule or demand in mind. And it was the first time that I'd done that for a long time, because usually right now, if I'm painting, it's because I have an illustration job. It's probably for someone else, or it's for me to get textile design out, and there's an urgency and a structure and a deadline. And so it's a very different type of creativity. And I thought that was a really beautiful experience. But I bring it up to say that was something I carved out space for during 1 month. I don't have time to paint aimlessly every week of the year. If I devoted myself to that, it would mean that I couldn't study my Hebrew text and share that information on social media, or I couldn't lead my women's circle that month, or I couldn't volunteer for the school tuck shop. So it is a balancing act, and we have to have the broad perspective in mind rather than saying we can fit it all into a day or a week or a month. Look at the expanse of our year, look at the expanse of our life, and know that there's a season for lots of different things. Right now, this is not my season for painting aimlessly every day, but I could give myself a window of it.
Yeah. Well, we opened up the conversation with saying how much I value the balance that you present in the dark and the light.
Yeah.
The evenness.
Yeah.
and the non-avoidance of the harder things, um, and the seeking solutions. I think the balance is, I love and now I'm remembering, right? The die and
Yeah.
the sun, the die and the sun, the die and the sun. It's like that seems to be the theme,
Yeah.
that we touch the ether and we wipe the butt.
Right. That is the gift of our human experience. You captured it perfectly. We cannot always be up here, and I'm putting my hand above my head for anyone who's listening. We cannot always be in these lofty mystical realms, exchanging ideas and concepts. We have to draw them down into our lives. That is our challenge. That is our gift. That is our opportunity in this earthly realm, in this time that we have under the sun, in this time we're given in our body, and and especially in our relationships. That's what's given to us. How can I be present and deal with the messiness and the pain and the grief and the challenges of every day, and yet still stay hopeful, still stay connected to the divine, whatever that connection is to me, still stay in my faith. And I think that what you're describing, look, some people are really black and white people, and they love finding a position and expressing that position. I'm definitely more of a gray person, and
Mm.
I seek to understand different perspectives. I seek to hold different perspectives. And I think that social media, especially because we're expected or needed to give a position that's under 90 seconds long and to express that wholeheartedly, it's really sometimes difficult to express or to receive nuance and to not have a solution for something. I think we're in an age where people really want to present solutions, quick solutions, present their opinion that has to be very defined in a short capsule, a small capsule, and we lose in that space the ability to listen, to receive, to hold multiple narratives, to hold multiple perspectives. And so I'm grateful that you reflect back that I hold both light and dark, because it's something that I try to do. And I think there's been so much conflict in recent years, especially on social media, and so much stark opinion holding, that it's really, really important to sometimes say, I don't know. I'm willing to learn more. I'm willing to hear more. This is what I have. What can you bring to the table?
I mean, that's the Gemara. That's the Talmud. That's the
Yeah.
sacred text of the Jewish people, where there's one line of Torah and literally pages and pages and pages of opinions. That is the
Exactly.
special sauce. If anyone ever wondered what a Yiddish cup is, what a Jewish mind is, a Jewish mind
Yeah.
is is understanding of multiple perspectives. I genuinely believe that part of the reason why I'm so curious about different walks of life, why I could sit with you and hold the beauty of like a Jewish priestess, and I can sit with like a devout Christian and a Muslim, and like I could hold the greatness of all, is partially because of my Jewish upbringing, because I
Yeah.
genuinely see all of it. I see all perspectives, and sometimes that can be really confusing for me. I mean, as an actress, it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
As an actress, it works. Like I could play the
Yeah.
villain very, and find the humanity in that. I could play whatever it is.
Mm.
But sometimes you're right. When I'm asked to give my opinion on something I don't necessarily know, or that I can see all sides because of the way I was educated, right? Because of this modern Orthodox education, the Talmud, questions after
Yeah.
questions after questions. That's what we are raised uh, learning, like how to ask questions.
Yes, yes. And look, you naturally have a beautiful passion and curiosity for the human experience and for knowing and understanding people. And that's something that's so beautiful and unique and so alive within you, so vibrant. But I do think that there is this aspect of Judaism which teaches us to seek more than what's just in front of us. And that can be a divine seeking, but it's also finding the divine within every person, within every experience, within every pathway that we take in our lives. What's the life force energy in this moment? What's the vibrance in this moment? What's the beauty in this person? What's the beauty in this flower? You know, it's this like trying to reveal more than what's on the surface. And that's a passionate quest, and that's what happens in the Gemara when they're, you know, these texts, when they're arguing and they're trying to find an answer and trying to say, but no, but there's another answer here and there's something deeper here and let's look at it from this side. And this is how you're really approaching your entire life. I want to understand the gem in this person, the gem in this situation, the beauty in that character, the depth of that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. And I do find a lot of joy even in even in like the intellectual conflict. I do not find any joy in like
Yes.
gross manifest conflict. Please no. Like I just have no interest in that. But
No.
I love when ideas rub up against each other. Ideas that I even hold true for myself. Um that I can hold, like the gray, the black, and the white. Um and
Yes.
I find that you do that really beautifully. There are times when, things flare up, in Israel, let's say, or when there's like recently with some of the anti-Semitism that's been flaring up. And I do find that you take a breath and you somehow find the words. And as you sort of replied back to me, like, it's unfortunate that I need to find the words at all, but I do
Yeah.
find that I do find that you find them, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. And the images, and the images. I
Yeah.
just really
Thank
value that in
you.
you.
Yeah. You know what? Thank God I feel like this community that we have in the online space, I trust that everyone is showing up with their heart and showing up with a curiosity to understand and to learn. And so I try to speak to that from my heart and trust that if it's something that's genuine and truthful and honest, that it will reverberate where it needs to. But yes, online it's difficult because you know you just have to put it there out and trust that it reaches who it's meant to reach, and trust that it opens the minds and the ears of the people who it can.
Well, I'm really genuinely grateful for your moderate, feminine, open-hearted voice and your work in the world. And I have been for so long. Yay. I have been from yesterday to
Thank you so
tomorrow
much.
across the
Yes,
world.
and continuing. May this only be the beginning of many of these beautiful conversations. I mean, you exude such light and such joy and such enthusiasm, and yeah, it's a joy to witness, and I hope to see you on the stage one day as well.
Hey, amen, amen, amen. Where can we find you? You mentioned a monthly women's circle that I want to be a part of. Tell us all the things, please and please.
So, okay, so you can find me on Instagram, Micaela_Ezra, and on my website, Micaela Ezra, or for my brand, AHYIN Judaica, AHYIN, Judaica.com. I have a mailing list and I am very organic with that, let's say. It's not like a regular monthly email, it's when the inspiration hits. In Sydney, I've started a women's circle every month to talk about the energy of the month. It's an in-person circle, but I hope to bring that to the online space. perhaps we can discuss how that could happen. And that's the best way to keep up with the regular day-to-day writings and expressions and information. And I'm writing a children's book. It's called Magic Little Light, and it's about exactly what we were talking about, the spark of divine, this soul that's within everyone, and how we come to know that.
I can't wait to read it. I'm just so glad that we connected, that you were patient with my technical issues, um,
Not a
and that you exist in the world, really. Thank you. I hope one day we
Daniela.
get to hug. I want to be part of that circle. I've never been to Australia.
Well, you're welcome anytime. And thank you so much for having us. Thank you for your open-hearted questions and your kindness and your genuine, vibrance that comes through with everything. It's been such a beautiful, beautiful hour together.
Thank you, Micaela. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening, friends. You can always contact me at Daniela Rabbani on Instagram. I love hearing from you. If you want to bring Micaela over from Australia, let's get that
Yeah,
party started. Let's do
I
it.
know. Beautiful.
We should just throw a party in the West Village. Don't you think?
I'm up for that. That's amazing.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
You know what? I can't even tell you how much I wish we'd known each other when we were there, but all in the right time.
Mm-hmm. B'sha'a tova, as they say, in the
Yes,
Kwitiv show.
yes.
All right,
And
guys, that was enough Yiddish and Hebrew for your day. Thank you and thank you.
be well.